This isn't your typical motorsports podcast. You're listening to Crush This, a monster truck podcast presented by High Octane Coffee and J Concepts. A show where we take you inside the minds of your favorite drivers, past and present, of the monster truck industry. And now, your hosts, Brad Shaw and Dan Chichagash. Buckle in. The show starts now.
Oh, there we go. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Crush This, a Monster Truck Podcast Live. My name is Bradshaw, also known as the Monster Truck Canucker. Don't mind me adjusting things. I had just recently moved, so getting the setup, kind of, perfecting it. So this is the new kind of, in a way, studio, the Canadian studio for Crush This. Cheech will not be here on this episode. He was hoping to, but he is traveling to Iowa with the Hall brothers. It's a little bit too loud in the semi, or else he would have joined us. So if you're in I don't know exactly where in Iowa. I know Cheech is going to be watching. So Cheech, if you're watching this, let us know where you're going to be in Iowa, so people can come check out the Hall brothers and come meet you. So also, guys, before we get into anything else, I want to give a thank you to our sponsors and people that support us. Number one, High Octane Coffee, Joe Sylvester. Since day one, Joe has always supported us in what we do. Nick Davis with Back Channel Productions. We have 6B Apparel with Chris Bozen. We have MTRC with Colby Marshall, Justin Stories, everybody else that supports us. That means the world to us. So, all right. Well, this week we have a guy that has been in the sport for a couple of years now. He does a lot of stuff with NBC Sports with Monster Jam. He also does a lot of the live events with Monster Jam and much more. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Scott Jordan. Scott, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. What's up? Good to have you. Good to be on the show, actually. I'm used to saying good to have you because it's always my show, but good to be on somebody's show now.
It's good. It's a role reversal.
It is a role reverse. I don't know what to do with here with my hands or anything,
You're just going to turn into Ricky Bobby.
I might. What? She'll be home soon, okay? So my kids are involved here, everybody. So I've got 3 girls, and if you've watched me on any type of podcast before, you know that the nights that I'm home, it's just me, and they're always here. So they will be in and out. So enjoy. Welcome to my circus.
Hey, it's glad to be joining the circus for this thing. So let's start in the beginning, how you kind of got into the Monster Jam and monster trucks. It's with announcing, we've had a lot of different announcers, come into the industry through different platforms. I know that you do a Justin Timberlake tribute act as well, and many other platforms. How did you get involved into Monster Jam?
I went to an audition. I saw it on Facebook, to be honest with you. Somebody pushed me into the audition just to go. I happened to know the casting director at the time. We were friends and co-workers at Disney many years ago. And I just called her a little bit and said, is this something that, I could do? I knew nothing about trucks. And I went. It was at Spotlight Dance Studio in Orlando. I remember I was working at Universal Studios at the time as an entertainment manager. And I got there late. I was the last one to get there, and they were able to see me. And that's Ivy's hand here. Ivy's saying hi. I got there, and Scott Douglas was there, and I read a few things. I got a call back, and knew enough about sports to. Yes, you're waving to everybody. Hi. No, you can't. I knew enough about sports to get through it, and they brought me down to Sunrise, Florida, to do an actual in-person audition. I remember there were 13 of us there, so we were all kind of tasked with different things. And I was the first one to go out on the court to interview anybody on the track, and it was Kevin King that I interviewed, and he was driving Fluffy at the time. And so that was my first Monster Jam interview, and I got the job and put in a pit reporter role on Stadium Championship Series West at the time, and just kind of went from there. So I knew nothing. It was literally kind of thrown to the wolves thing. Not that they didn't prepare me, because I did get to train a little bit with Leslie Mears in the shop. But when I got out to Anaheim for my first show, it was just, hey, just, talk to people and talk to the drivers and the crew chiefs, learn about as much as you can, and go from there. So that's what I did.
Did you have any knowledge of Monster Jam or monster trucks leading up to this?
I did. I had a little bit. I had gone as a kid. My Joey, that's okay. They can see you. My parents had taken me as a kid at the Baltimore Arena, which at the time was the Baltimore Civic Center. So I did get to see a few Monster Jam shows there. This is Lily. This is Joey. And I saw Dennis Anderson. I met Dennis Anderson for the first time at the Baltimore Civic Center. And so I knew a little bit. But I remember at my initial audition, I had to call Tom LeDuc, did a freestyle run in Mental Militia. So I had to call that run. And I didn't know a lot of the terminology. So Scott Douglas just said, "What do you watch? What's your favorite sport?" I said, I watch NFL. I watch NBA. He said, just use that knowledge and call it based on what you would do. So that's kind of what I did. So for me, I knew of the sport. I had watched Monster Jam as a kid. I was more of a supercross guy at the time. When I got older, it was more about riding dirt bikes and motocross. And so that's kind of where I shifted to. And, it was literally just kind of starting from scratch with all the terminology, learning the parts of the truck, learning how the truck works, and learning different things like that. So it was definitely a big learning curve and a work in progress when I started.
Well, having a guy like Scott Douglas, who is such an icon in the sport, been doing it since the early days of TNT, having him as a coach and somebody to help you, and with many other announcers, a lot of announcers come to mind with me that I've been around, like Darren Palin, Greg Whitaker, a lot of announcers. Besides Scott, who else has been a huge help with you kind of learning the ins and outs of Monster Jam?
Well, you mentioned Scott and Greg, who were two huge influences and still are to this day for me. And when I learned, Larry Jewett was a guy who had been an announcer for a long time for Monster Jam. He was a big help. Ryan Lacoste. When I first started, Ryan was the host of the television show there, so he became a good friend of mine, and we ended up doing a lot of events together. So those guys there were huge influences on me. But I think it all starts and ends with Scott Douglas. He a legend, a Hall of Famer, and the guy that hired me, and the guy that coached me, and the guy that called me to tell me, you're being hired in this role. He called me to tell me I was taking over the TV show. So he has been instrumental in my career, and still somebody that I see down the road. I've done his podcast twice. I just saw him a couple weeks ago in Landover. And so just somebody that had a huge influence in me, still does to this day. I try to, live up to the legacy that he put there. And then Ryan Lacoste, who did such an amazing job before me. I just try to live up to what they did on Monster Jam television. And I try to add a little bit of each of their personalities into what I do, but still stay true to what I bring to the sport as well.
And obviously with doing the Monster Jam on NBC Sports, you also have an awesome co-host in Colt Stevens. I love the dynamic between you two guys. In Canada, we don't really get to watch a lot of the live stuff. Normally I catch it on YouTube, or there's a different channel that now carries some of the older events. And your guys' dynamic reminds me of, Scott Douglas and Mike Hogwood back in the TNN days, or Ken Stout and Scott Douglas. You like, how excited do you guys get? Because you're not calling it in a studio like some other broadcasts would have done back in the day. You guys are live at the venue, reacting to it as it happens. And I think that is such a different vibe, and it brings, it's different. I love the content.
Yeah, it's Colt and I had Ivy, hang on, baby, honey. Okay, there you go. You can have some water. There you go. Colt and I had a dynamic from years ago when I was a pit reporter. He was a driver, and I'd always interview him, and he had a lot of charisma and always just a lot of fun to be around. So he and I already had a built-in chemistry that we've just worked on and elevated. But there are a lot of incredible announced teams. What you mentioned, Scott and Mike, but Army Armstrong as well. Yep. Another guy, a great team. And Colt and I just have a different dynamic, and we are live there calling everything. And I know that, went viral, our call on the finals, the racing finals in Orlando with Ryan and Brandon. And that was like real raw emotion. He and I are fans of the sport. He's a former driver, and I'm sure he will get back to being a current driver at some point. So he literally brings this excitement that elevates me in the booth. And just when we see something, it's just that vibe being there live. There's nothing like it. So what you're hearing on TV is our real raw emotion. And I love having that element because for so long we did go in and do a lot of post-production announcing, and it was great at the time, but there's nothing like being there at the venue. So Colt has been amazing. I started, my first color commentator was Bryce Kenny. I had Morgan Kane with me. I've had Scott Buto with me as well, Barry Musauer, and they were all great. But there's just nothing like what Colt brings, and literally just elevates me to a different level that I've never been to.
And you mentioned the World Finals, and obviously you're wearing the hat. Let's take it back to that race.
Yeah,
it's hard to get the words to describe that moment. Like, I've never been to any World Finals really, and hopefully next year in Nashville I will be attending. I'm planning on it. But talk about how, especially that event, but that race in particular, just it's insanity. Like Ryan coming off that jump almost backwards, like, come on, like that. You guys, like you said, your guys' emotion in the call, it was perfect for that.
Yeah, it was. So leading up to that race, we were on a rain delay, and the track was just getting crazy muddy, and they tried to they had to rush it because the heavens were literally opening up and they had to get to it. So literally we see them line up at the starting line, and it was just instantaneous start. There was no build, there was no let's get ready to do this. It was literally the light went green and they went at it. And I don't know how either one of them navigated that track. Ryan has won 3 world championships. Brandon was looking for his first. So had Ryan crossed the finish line first, I think we would have still had the same emotion. But the fact that it was Brandon and it was his first world championship, I think that added, quite an element to our reaction. But it was just insane being there that day with all the craziness, and hats off to everybody on the staff there to get just to get to that point, because we didn't know what we were dealing with, but the weather was just a nightmare for everybody. And the fact that it led to probably and arguably the most incredible racing final in World Finals history, it was just an added bonus.
Now, this year, you guys were doing a lot of like pre-show videos. You were doing the power rankings and such, and the YouTube videos interviewing different drivers. How did that come about? Because I think that was the first time you guys really ever did something like that for Monster Jam.
Yeah, we're trying to expand everything and offer more content to our fans, and we'll see that throughout the summer. But just we're trying new things to see what sticks, and so far most of the things that we've tried have been able to stick. I think more is good for everybody at this point, and definitely the YouTube channel is an added element, and everything that we've been putting up on monsterjam.com also helps. So yeah, we're just trying to put out as much as we can to give our fans as many options as we can. And I think we're at a point right now where there's more out there for Monster Jam fans to watch than there has been in a very long time.
Well, I know that they're about to unveil, they do the first episode of the kind of animated series that they're doing, which I believe is used with BeamNG, and that's kind of my background, where I came from with the virtual stuff. Right. And even the addition of the Monster Jam YouTube channel membership, adding all the old events, that for me is something that I love, because I love going back to all those old events, especially Atlanta 2000, Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger 7. That's all that has to be said. People understand Atlanta 2000, Digger 7, Power Wheelies. What, like, do you guys have more ideas coming towards that, with more live content? Because I know a lot of people want to see more live action with a lot of shows. Is that something you guys are kind of looking into doing at some point?
Yeah, it's definitely on the radar. When we did the All-Star Challenge back in 2019, we had a live element of that on, pay-per-view to our, European fans. So something like that went really well. And I think there's definitely a market there to do something live. I think the thing is with Monster Jam that makes it a little more difficult is that with, certain live events, when Supercross does everything live, they're on a very tight schedule with NBC. With us, we can't predict the rollovers. We can't predict the recoveries. So there's a little bit of a delay in that. So that causes kind of a conflict with how do we fill that content on television if there's a 4 or 5 minute recovery. How do we do that? How do we keep fans engaged? So that's kind of just been the issue that we're trying to deal with. But it's definitely been proposed. There is going to be more content coming this summer. that I've pitched and we're kind of moving forward through. But as far as live goes, that's the ultimate goal, is to do some more live broadcasts. And I know everybody wants to do it. It's just matching up logistics to make it happen. Just because we do have that element that Supercross is missing, where we have these 12,000-pound trucks that they're unpredictable. I know a motorcycle is unpredictable as well, but when a rider in Supercross, crashes, they can bring out the yellow flags, the caution flags, move everything off to the side, but keep the race going. With us in freestyle, when a truck flips over and rolls over, it could take anywhere from 1 minute to 6 or 7 minutes to get it off the track. And it's just, how do we keep our sponsors happy with that? So that's just kind of where we're at right now. But definitely, everybody wants to do it. We'd love to do it. We had some success with that back in 2019 in Vegas. So it's out there. It's just making it match up logistically is what we're trying to do.
And I remember watching the All-Star Challenge live, and that was so cool, because I remember when I was a little kid watching the first World Finals. Well, technically the first World Finals in Vegas. I know they had the World Finals, the World Finals in St. Louis, I believe in 1990 or 99. But I remember watching the first World Finals from Vegas when I was a little kid, and watching the All-Star Challenge kind of brought me back to that moment, because there's nothing like live monster trucks. Let's be honest. Like, YouTube is great, and there's a lot of good YouTube creators out there that are doing events from other, promoters and stuff, like Nick Davis of Back Channel Productions and the Monster Blog and all them. But live is so much better.
Yeah. So. Live is a lot better. And I feel like we have Lily. You want to say hi? This is Lily. She's my.
Hello.
Yes, we can turn it up in the headphones. Here you go. Okay, well that's about as loud as it's gonna go, sweetheart. You are seeing. So again, to your audience, it's me and the 3 kids here tonight. So we're trying to keep everybody entertained, but live is the way to go. And I'm sorry that it's not working. You're gonna have to take it out a little bit. You are saying hi. That's Ivy. Say hi to everybody. Hello.
Hello.
Is there something?
There's nothing else you can do, kiddo. It's tagged in all the way. Live is a way to go for sure, but we do everything live to tape, which is also a great way to go, because we can at least get that raw emotion in. And honestly, this past season, what we've done, there's been less post-production than anything before. So, what you're hearing is our live call. It just airs a few months later based on the schedule, but you're still getting that live actual call in the booth. So we're not changing anything as far as what we're saying on television. It's just because of our air dates, they air just a little bit later than the actual live event. So everything that you are hearing is live. So you're still getting that feel. We just have to wait a little while based on, the air dates that we've been given to show it to everybody.
Now, one thing that I'm excited about is seeing international events come back. London, England just happened. And an event close to me at the end of next month, Edmonton, is happening. I am overjoyed with that. I don't think we've ever had a stadium show for a long time. Like, the last time I remember, it was the old Rexall place where the Edmonton Oilers played. That was where they were doing a lot of the shows left. And I'm excited. I've never been to a stadium show. I'm pumped getting to see Weston in one of his, first stadium shows. I know he did the World Finals, but this is probably, I think, maybe his first actual stadium show outside of that.
Yeah.
Talk about, how, let's talk about kind of like, I had to bring it up with the pandemic, how that changed everything, with the tour you guys were doing, and even just how did all that change for you guys?
Yeah, it just shut us down completely. I just finished up a Jacksonville show, and we were supposed to go to Detroit, and the pandemic happened, and all that got completely shut down. So as we started navigating towards a different atmosphere, and we were gearing up for Arlington in October, we were just trying to figure out what's the best way to keep everybody safe from a staff standpoint, and what's the best way to keep our fans safe and comfortable. And thank goodness we dealt with a great venue at AT&T Stadium in Arlington that had these protocols put in place, and that we matched everything they did, and we went off without any issue at all. So once we did that show in Arlington, it was okay. Now we can do this. So let's figure out how to do it for next year. And that's when the Stadium Championship Series concept came up of doing shows for, I think it was at 50% capacity at a time. And then as certain protocols got lifted and, the restrictions got lifted, we were able to get to what we were in 2022 this year, which was 5 tours at full capacity. And we took every precautionary measure, and we had a great staff and a great support system all the way from the top to Mr. Feld, that gave us the opportunity to put these systems into place that made sure that everybody was tested multiple times before stepping onto property, before leaving property, that everybody was taken care of, that everybody knew they were safe. So it definitely added a different element. But I think we took what we learned during COVID and added that into what we have now. And that's just more of a safe environment for everybody. Even though the protocols have been lifted and everything seems to be on the up and up, we still take every precautionary measure to make sure that everybody's safe. So it was uncertain for a long time. We didn't know when or if or when Monster Jam was going to come back, but we did, and we're back now, I think, stronger than ever. And I think everybody will see that as we move through the summer and into the fall and then into 2023, that we are not going away anytime soon, and we are back and better than ever. So definitely it was a trying period, and we had to try a lot of different things and to see what worked, but everybody came together and I think nailed it to the point that we could keep people working and get people back to work as quick as possible and keep everybody safe.
Now, with being in the sport for a couple of years as you've been, who has impressed you the most? Like, we can talk about kind of like the legends of the sport, or even the rookies.
Right.
Who's impressing you with a lot of the skills that they're pulling off these days?
I was very impressed by what Tyler Menninga did this year. A lot of thoughts on him as far as transitioning from arenas to stadiums, and he just absolutely killed it in every way possible. So he definitely impressed me. You can't say that Ryan Anderson isn't impressive. We expect it from him each and every week, but the guy comes out and just does perfect events like they're going out of business. He's gone on a 15 race win streak this season at one point, and just the things that he's done, the fact that he placed on the podium in 4 different competitions, world finals. He's just, I don't think there's anybody better than him in the sport. David Olford is a guy that has really impressed me, going from being a crew chief to having a ride with Team Throttle Monster. Some of his freestyles on the Arena West series were insane. So he has impressed me thoroughly. Weston Anderson impressed me a lot. Elvis Linez was a guy that I thought when he came back in 2021 in Great Clips Mohawk Warrior in arenas, that just literally exceeded all expectations. The list goes on and on. Armando Castro, I think, does an amazing job. Bryce Kenny is a guy that I think flies under the radar, but is a pure superstar in the sport. What Kristen Anderson did this year has never been done by anybody. So there's a long list of drivers that impress me. And I know that Weston Anderson had a phenomenal rookie season, but I think John Zimmer Jr., being a rookie in the same season as Weston Anderson, kind of, had to take a back burner to that. There were co-rookies of the year, but John Zimmer Jr. did amazing. Craig Champion, even Craig, I thought did an amazing job and stayed consistent on a very, very tough series for him. So, it's a lot of drivers impressed me this season. It really is a true testament to the talent that we have on our roster.
I know he only did a few shows, but Dalton Widener in Jurassic Attack, came out in a different tour with the toughest monster truck tour, came out rookie season, won the championship, and he's been doing a little bit of stuff with some Monster Jam shows. And whenever they decide to put him in a full season, hopefully next year in Monster Jam, I expect him to shake things up a bit, because that kid has talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did it, on the independent circuit as well as in Monster Jam. And, Team Throttle Monster right now, what Mike and Paul are doing over there is incredible. And I was, I just saw Mike for the last couple of weeks on the road, and I'm so proud of everything that they've done with that team. Velociraptor now is out there. They've got Jurassic Attack, of course, and Vendetta, and just all their trucks. The empire that they built out in Utah is insane. So I love what they're doing. I expect some big things from that entire team next year.
Well, I love the kind of the concept. I kind of relate this to the NHRA. I'm a huge drag racing fan, and you look at the teams back a couple of years ago. You look at the John First Racing team, Don Schumacher team, the super teams, and that's kind of what I feel like we're heading towards with monster trucks and Monster Jam. You look at Team Throttle Monster, you look at James Trentina and Triple B. You look at what Zane Ratu is doing with his team. Now they've kind of downsized since he purchased the Buck and stuff. But these kind of super teams are taking over the sport, which I think is good. And especially with and it allows them to do more Monster Jam shows and the independent shows. You know, I remember when the pandemic hit, a lot of the independent shows, independent promoters, you know, they were events at that time, which I thought was really cool, you know, as well. Because like I'm a fan of it doesn't matter if it's Monster Jam, independent promoter, it doesn't matter. I'm a fan of Monster Trucks and Monster Jam in general. You know, it's just exciting to see how many trucks are spreading up. You look at recreation, you mentioned Velociraptor, a truck we debuted on the podcast last week, Guardian Angel. You know, it's cool to see these trucks and teams kind of, you know, it feels like the sport is as busy as ever.
Yeah, so we talk a lot about the rise of the independent on our NBC broadcast, and we mentioned some great teams already, but you still have Team Scream Racing doing incredible things. Jim Kohler, you talked about recreation with Tom Fullery and Jamie Garner with Overboard Motorsports now doing a lot of cool stuff, and I even look at Two Extreme with Jimmy Cretin. How can you forget about a two-time World Finals champion? And you mentioned Triple B Motorsports. I know they're not involved in Monster Jam right now, but I see everything that James is doing, and I have to respect everything that he's doing and bringing light to some of these names that maybe have been forgotten for a little while. So I think now is a great time for independent trucks to thrive in Monster Jam as well as on the independent circuit. But it's crazy to me how the playing field has leveled. I know that independent drivers and owners have a lot more expenses than fleet drivers do, and a lot more, I guess, on the line when their truck breaks. But we have a lot of really talented technicians and independent drivers in Monster Jam that are doing amazing things. So I love that any given Sunday or any given Saturday you can watch John Gordon throw it down or Cole Bernard throw one down, and Jim Kohler still out there, Corey Rummel, another great talent. So definitely this year, I think 2022 was the rise of the independent throughout the sport.
Well, and you mentioned John Gordon and Too Tall and a lot of these guys that were crew guys and now they're drivers. And I feel like crew guys that turn to be drivers have a better understanding of how the truck works. Therefore, they know when they can push it harder, when they have to back off of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a huge advantage to them getting the opportunity to drive. And, if you look at that Ryan Anderson crew chief tree with John Gordon and Brandon Vincent and how, John has really come into his own with Bad Company, and Brandon Vincent now a World Finals champion. David Olford was there crewing for Barney Musauer years ago. And, he's crewed for Brianna Mahan as well. But just that experience to be a crew chief with Monster Jam and kind of, learn the business, learn the sport, learn the trucks, and then have the opportunity to drive. It's definitely shown through those talents at how skilled they are now that they can literally tell. I think it's incredible when a driver can tell immediately what's broken or how far they can push the truck. I think that goes a long way in what they can do on the track. I hear it every weekend with Colt. Colt, Colt knows immediately what is breaking, what the truck sounds like, how far a driver can push it, what gear they need to be in, and just having that experience, I think, goes a long way in what a driver can do on the track.
Yeah, and that's kind of similar to like with NHRA. They have in the booth Tony Pedregon, multiple time champion, and Brian Loans, which we've had Brian on the podcast. It's that similar dynamic. Having even in NASCAR, they have, Dale Jr. in the booth with some crew chiefs and, a color guy, play-by-play guy. I think having a announced team like that makes it perfect, and with Monster Jam this year, adding, some different tracks into the schedule with the different tours. Each tour had a different track, which I think is really cool. Yeah. You kind of had in the Stadium Series Yellow, that kind of like, I don't know how you would describe that track. I know they've done that track similar in what was it? San Antonio, quite a long time ago.
Well, we had a figure eight track in Stadium Championship Series Green years ago, and then so it's kind of similar to what the paperclip track ended up being. So that track is very challenging. And when we first saw it debut, it was a fast track, but still very challenging, and then had a lot of twists and turns to it. So I love what they're doing with the tracks and keeping different series different, and then adding a little bit of everything to World Finals. I just think it keeps everybody on their toes and keeps it very competitive with the racing.
Well, it reminds me of like the late 2000s, early 2010s when you had so many different track variations. It wasn't just a St. Louis style or a Chicago style. It was always kind of just changed up. And then you look at Atlanta, going back to old school straight line, albeit a little different,
Yeah,
but that event alone is such a cool thing.
right.
One of the biggest explorers you guys probably run on all year. All out balls to the wall racing. Talk about how that event, in my opinion, that event's special. I feel like that venue could hold a world finals caliber, event with how big it is and the amount of space you
Right.
guys have there.
So Atlanta Motor Speedway, when we did Stadium Championship Series and that whole season last year, we did 4 events in 2 days there. And at one point the track was really muddy because it was raining like crazy. Um, so as far as the venue goes, I thought that track added an incredible element of excitement to what we were bringing, and the fact that the track was so deep and you had that concrete, that racetrack in there where everybody could kind of get the momentum, but you still had a muddy, slick track in there. We saw some crazy donuts and kind of sliding around that added a different element to it. I thought it was incredible. Now, four events in 2 days, that's a lot. Everybody did an amazing job. We were all tired. We were all, kind of ready to, move on to another place after 4 events in 2 days. But I thought Atlanta Motor Speedway was very exciting. I would love to go back there again and maybe do a 2-show weekend. So everybody has a chance to still do that track and see that racing. But I didn't know what to expect from Atlanta because I'd never done the Atlanta Motor Speedway. I've been to the Georgia Dome, and I've done that show. I've done Duluth at the I think the Gas South Arena in the Atlanta area, but I never done Atlanta Motor Speedway. So being there was historic for me. To go there and just be a part of that. But I thought it was incredible. Just like you said, it was I think one of the most exciting weekends we'd had last year. And I would love to see us go back again and do some more TV there.
Well, it reminds me of the like early, back when everything was like SRO or Pace, before, Feld
Right.
bought it, the US Truck Fest events, they
Yeah.
had the big, 2-show, they had the open qualifiers, and then they had the main show, like that kind of old school style event.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of that. And as an old school fan, I love that because, it brings about the nostalgia. Look at what they did with the TNT Unfinished Business event.
Mm-hmm.
That shook everything up at that point.
Yeah, anytime we can bring an old school element into Monster Jam, I think it's great. I definitely feel that we are right where we need to be as far as changes in the sport that have made it, better, more exciting, and faster and safer. But I do feel like that old school element does need to be tapped in, especially for a hardcore fan base. So Atlanta Motor Speedway is one of those places that you get that. Hagerstown Speedway, another place you get that. They're going to Salinas here in a couple weeks. I think that's another place where you can get that feel for it. I did watch a little bit from what I saw on YouTube of Unfinished Business, and seeing the trucks and the drivers that were there, and Scott Douglas was there as well. That as a fan is something great that I love to see. So I'm hoping that in the future we can add a little more of that old school hardcore Monster Jam feel, especially since we're celebrating 30 years of the sport. Anytime we can go back and add something that brings people back and say, oh my goodness, I remember this, and they can share that maybe with their kids, I think it's great.
Well, I know in Minneapolis quite a couple years ago, they had Ever Jasmer come out, bring USA One when he still owned it. And anytime that, and it doesn't matter what company it is, whenever they acknowledge the old school, it's like game on, just because, a lot of younger fans don't really know the heritage of the sport. They don't know where it started from. They
Right.
don't know that the TNT days and, I know we're talking about Monster Jam, but they don't know about Bigfoot. They don't know about, how this sport has grown throughout the years, how Dennis Anderson started, and I think, tapping into that is what, needs to happen to, kind of bridge that generational gap.
Sure. And maybe there's an opportunity there to do that soon. You know, there's a lot of history in Monster Jam that our younger fans may not be familiar with. We have our YouTube channel, and if you do a subscription to that, there's 20 years of content there from some of the older Monster Jam shows on TNT and on Speed that are available to fans to watch, that maybe we'll tap into a little bit of that. But I look forward to an opportunity somewhere down the line to maybe bring some of those elements into a few of our live events, and have a generational context there where, the granddads that used to go and take their kids can bring their grandkids, or the dads that watched it as a fan when they were young can bring their kids, and just have that nostalgia factor. Anything with nostalgia is good. So I do think there's an element there that we can explore, and I do hope in the future that an opportunity presents itself where we can bring that to our fans.
So you mentioned earlier you were more of a fan of Supercross growing up, and I also love Supercross. It's one of my other favorite sports. Let's talk about this last season. I don't know if you were able to catch up with a lot of what happened, but man, what a season this was for Supercross.
Yeah, I went from being a fan of Monster Jam as a kid to you going into high school and just adapting more to Supercross. I still knew Monster Jam. I still followed it when I could, but as far as going to live events, I always went to Supercross in Vegas. I'd been to Supercross in Salt Lake City before. I've been to Supercross a lot more times than I had actually gone to Monster Jam live events. So being able to work for the same company that owned Monster Jam and Supercross to me was a dream come true. And in 2019, I had the opportunity to actually go and call Supercross for a year. I'd done a couple Monster Energy Cups in Vegas, and the opportunity came to be able to call play-by-play every Saturday for Supercross. So for me, it was amazing to be able to do both and just go back and forth. But yeah, the season was unreal, and Tomac is just an incredible rider. I know Cooper Webb, had a couple titles, and I thought maybe he was going to come back and do something big this year. But Tomac is just so consistent, and I don't think there's anybody better right now in the sport than Eli Tomac. And the fact that his ride is seemingly questioned every year. I'm like, I don't understand how that happens. He deserves everything he gets, and he's unbelievable. And I root for him every week, man. Just to know his story, growing up and seeing him come out there and do it, it's just inspiring. So I love Eli Tomac. He's a super nice guy in person, and I just don't think there's anybody right now more talented on a motorcycle in that sport than Eli Tomac. Chase Sexton is right there.
Yep.
Chase Sexton is absolutely right there, and Chase Sexton is from around this area, so I had a chance, over the last couple of years to be on some airplanes with him and talk to him as he was coming through the 250 class. But I think Sexton will have a couple of years of just being right there with Tomac, and then he'll overtake him. But Eli, man, he's just right up there with McGrath and Dungey and Villapoto as far as the all-time greats in the sport.
Well, people were unsure of, because he moved to Star Racing Yamaha in the offseason. Jason Anderson took over his spot at Monster Energy Kawasaki, and people are like, I don't know, we don't know how Tomac's going to fare on the Yamaha. The Yamaha has been a proven bike for years.
Yeah.
You look at what Barsha did on that, what Stewart did on that, Ferrandis. You look at what they were able to accomplish on that bike. Tomac comes in and just shocks everybody.
Yeah.
It's a shame. Adam Cincerillo had to pull out of the season, and so did Roxon, which Roxon's back for the outdoor season.
Right.
But Anderson shocked me too, coming from the Rockstar Energy Husky team, coming over to Monster Energy Kawasaki. Like no one knew how he was going to fare on that completely different bike setup. But he came out and was winning races. Anderson did good this year.
Yeah, and Anderson is a guy that's had some injuries that have kind of kept him from. Obviously, he's a former champion, so the talent is there. He's just had some injuries that have kind of derailed a few of his opportunities. And I thought when I heard the change and he was taking over Tomac's spot, I thought he would thrive in that role, and he did. But for me, I think Tomac could literally ride a Vespa in a Supercross race and do something great. I mean, he's just so talented. And another guy I've always enjoyed. You mentioned Roxon, who I've loved, Barsha as well, but Dean Wilson is a guy that I've gotten behind. Yeah, he's another guy that's had some injury plagued seasons, but Dean is an incredibly well-mannered, nice dude, like one of the nicest guys I've met in that sport. And I always root for him, and the fact that he's Rockstar Husky, that team, he's anchored that team with Anderson for a long time. But Dean's a great dude, and I'll always just kind of root for him. I hope maybe he gets a championship at some point.
Oh, I agree. And Malcolm Stewart, coming over from Star Racing Yamaha, going to Rockstar Energy Husky, he thrived on that team as well. I think that's the best season he's had in a long time.
Definitely the best season he's had in a long time. And I thought when I saw that and heard that he was going over to get that opportunity with Rockstar Husky, I thought he would elevate his game a little bit more just based on the equipment that he was riding. So I'm happy for him. And that tandem and his brother, I watched his brother Bubba for a long time. Because went right in my element with Supercross. I had the opportunity of seeing Jeremy McGrath and in his later years, and Chad Reed and James Stewart and Ryan Villapoto and Ryan Dungey. These guys just compete every week against each other. And I thought, James was an incredible rider. Then when I saw Malcolm and I got a chance to call some of Malcolm's races, I was like, damn, this kid's good too,
I think as soon as the Lawrence brothers, Jet and Hunter, get up to the 450 class,
right.
Tomac's got some competition there, depending on how long Tomac wants to stay in the sport.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, because I know Honda HRC has Roxon and Sexton. So do you think, Roxon is going to retire in the next couple of years and one of the, Lawrence brothers is going to take their spot? Or do you think the Lawrence brothers are going to kind of go their own separate way to different teams? Because that's the big question when they're going to jump up and what team they're going to be with, basically.
I think Roxon wants a title before he steps away, and unless the injuries just get too much for him that he can't do it. I know he had, his hand injury from a few years back was pretty crippling to him. But I do think that Roxon is going to keep going until he can at least get close to a championship. And he's always right there. The Lawrence brothers, and it just becomes sort of a corporate thing with them is Honda HRC going to want to keep Roxon or elevate, one of the Lawrence brothers up to the 450 class? I think that's what it boils down to. I don't think Roxon is going to want to walk away until he is able to really compete a full year for a championship. So it just becomes kind of what does that company want to do with their ride? Do they want to push Roxon out? And maybe Roxon goes and rides for somebody else like we saw Tomac do. We've seen Jason Anderson switch teams. It's going to be tough to see Roxon on another team besides that Honda team, but anything is possible in Supercross. I don't see Roxon stepping away anytime soon. So it really just becomes, that they want the younger guys to step up in that ride, and Roxon goes and rides somewhere else. Well, and again, maybe Roxon does a privateer thing. We saw Chad Reed do that. Chad Reed became a privateer and still competed, at a high level, making main events. So maybe Roxon goes that route too, but you never know.
Yeah, I remember Barsha almost did that before I forget what team he jumped on, but he was going to do his own privateer thing on a Honda, which was kind of a shocker at the time. It was after his time at JGR, I think. Before he went off to, where was he before he went to Gas? I can't remember. But as we're winding down, let's talk about your kind of side gig, your Justin Timberlake tribute act. How long have you been doing that for?
Oh man, I started in 2008. I was doing a show in Vegas, and we actually had the opportunity to go to Europe for a while, and Justin had just released his debut solo album. So I started incorporating some of those songs into that show. And I had the opportunity when I got back to Vegas to audition for a show called Legends in Concert, which is the largest celebrity tribute show in the world. They've been in Vegas for over 30 years. And they offered me a job to come in and do Justin Timberlake. And, it kind of took off from there. So yeah, back in 2008. So we're talking 14 years now that I've been doing JT. And, when I moved back to Florida away from that production show, I put my own band together and just started doing my own show, and have a really good agent that, worked with my schedule with Monster Jam, which is my full-time job. That's where my priority is. But, sometimes the stars align and I can do some JT on the weekend and, make some extra money for my family and my kids, and just have some fun. It's a 90-minute show, and I get to step back into the tuxedo and, kind of suspend reality for a little while and do that show.
Maybe you should do that as a halftime show for Monster Jam.
I've offered that, but it just hasn't happened yet. I have offered that. We were able to do a musical number for the award ceremony in Orlando. So I opened the show. It wasn't available on the live stream. It was just for the fans that were in attendance and all the drivers and everything. I did Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up. So I rickrolled the entire room. That's how we opened the award ceremony.
Oh my gosh, that is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, I approached them. when they came to me about hosting the award ceremony, I said, you know what we should do that has never been done is a lavish musical number. And nobody hated the idea. They didn't say yes, they didn't say no. They said, okay, let's talk about it. So we talked about it, and I said, the thing is with the award shows is that everybody just seems so uptight, and just let's loosen them up a little bit before we start getting to the awards, and let's get them going, get everybody going. So I said, what song can we do that makes the most sense? Let's rickroll the entire room. So yeah, we did Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up, and it got everybody up on their feet and loosened up. So maybe next year in Nashville we'll do some JT. Who knows?
See, I just got the greatest idea. So you remember the videos that they would do in Vegas, like where they would lip sync to the videos or whatever of like all the drivers and lip sync to the song. Do that, but Rickroll version.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I like that.
That'd be a sick idea.
I like that.
And just before we end here, talk about, the World Finals moving to Nashville. The World Finals has been one of the most premier events in Monster Jam and Monster Trucks. Yeah. Was in Vegas for years upon years, then Orlando for the last 2 years, technically, even though we missed a year or two.
Right.
Moving to Nashville, new city for that event. Obviously, you guys have done Nashville before.
Yeah.
But talk about, moving it to Nashville and kind of what you guys are hoping the event will be for like next year.
Well, look, you look at Vegas and you look at Orlando. They're two top tourist destinations. Nashville is right there. Nashville has everything that you could want in a weekend destination. There's a big zoo there, the Nashville Zoo. There's a lot of activities there for families to come and do it. Obviously, Broadway is right there for adults. And the stadium is a top-notch venue. I've done both Supercross there and Monster Jam there multiple times. And Nissan Stadium, I think if there is ever a venue that is in my top 3, Nissan Stadium is right there. So when I heard the announcement that it was going to be Nashville, it made absolute total sense to me, because we want a city that supports our sport and our product. We want a stadium that we can bring the best product to. And we want an area where our fans can come and do some other things as well when they're not coming to the show and the events. So I think Nashville offers that. I'm excited to bring it there. I know that, we have our group going this weekend, I think leaving tomorrow to go out to Nashville to start scouting for our World Finals broadcast for next year. And we have a press conference that's going to be there in Nashville tomorrow, I think Thursday. To help us announce that. So I think it's a beautiful partnership that we've had with Nissan Stadium and the city of Nashville, and I'm excited to be there. It's one of my favorite towns to go to. First time I ever went to Nashville was years ago. I was in college. I was in a boy band, and we got signed by a Nashville label to be a country boy band. So we went up to Nashville to record an album and fell in love with the city. And when I was able to start going back with my Justin Timberlake tribute and then start going back there with both Monster Jam and Supercross, for me, it's like a second home. So I love it there. I think it's going to be an amazing weekend for us at World Finals. And I look forward to, being there for that.
I'm trying to convince my fiance to go. She's a huge Taylor Swift fan. And, I'm like, hey, we can kind of, you do your Taylor Swift thing and I can go watch Monster Jam.
That's right.
I'm trying to convince her. It's to do our honeymoon there next year.
It's the best of everything, as far as live music goes. Going down Broadway, there's every bar, every place has live music all day long, afternoon, morning, evening. You'll see a live band in every single bar in Nashville. Some of them have multiple floors of multiple bands. So, you want to go out for an early lunch before coming to Pit Party, you can go see some live music there, and then come to Pit Party and go to the event, and then wake up on Sunday morning, have breakfast, and see more live music, and then come back. But Nashville's a historic town, so I think that your fiance needs to go and see some live music while you come and hang out with us at Nissan Stadium.
I'm down. Well, Scott, is there any social media people can find you on, and where are you going to be next, where people can see you at a show possibly, or your Justin Timberlake thing?
Right. So I am on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Scott Jordan, MJSX is my handle. So follow me. As far as what's up next for us, we're still on CNBC every Saturday afternoon at 12. So you can watch us there this coming Saturday. I believe we have a 3-hour block this Saturday starting at noon Eastern. And we go noon Eastern to 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So 3 hours of Monster Jam and we'll be with you, I think, all the way until the fall on CNBC every Saturday afternoon. And then we're working on some new stuff this summer, some new content coming out. I can't really talk about it right now, but I promise you that monsterjam.com and our YouTube channel will have more content coming your way. And right now you can catch us with the Arena Series in 25 every 2 weeks on our YouTube channel. So that we take an arena show, condense it down to 25 minutes. I'm there doing the commentary each and every week. And so you can see a lot of our, hang on, honey. You can see a lot of our arena shows on that Arena Series in 25. So definitely watch that. Watch us on CNBC every Saturday. Stay tuned to monsterjam.com for new content. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at monsterjam, and follow me at Scott Jordan MJSX.
All right, well, Scott, thank you for coming on. It was awesome having you on, and we'll have to do this again with Cheech and shoot some more stuff, man.
For sure. Looking forward to it, and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No worries. Take care, Scott.
All right, buddy. You too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Scott Jordan with Monster Jam. Thank you to Scott for coming on. Next week, guys, we are going international. All right. And, I'm excited about this one. The guy that we're going to be interviewing has also been helping Kevin Talbot out with his new truck. Next week, we will have Tony Dixon of Swamp Thing joining us next week on the show. We are excited about that. Thanks to Cheech for getting that all set up for us. Also, 2 weeks after that, we will be having a man who I'm excited about this one. It's going to be a graphic design episode, guys. Is going to be Jason Becker of Master of Faster Graphics. I'm excited about that one, guys. To Jason, he is a phenomenal graphic designer. Been in the sport for a long time, doing recreation, just the trucks that he's done, Kraken, recreation stuff for Bill Payne's team. Jason is amazing. So we will have that. And then I'm not too sure who we're going to have between Tony and Jason. I will find out, try to get somebody for that. Cheech should be on next week. Again, if you're in Iowa, let me quickly message him and find out he's going to be. A second here. So yeah, I just messaged him. I'll find out that. A lot of events are happening with a lot of different tours. If there's a show near you, go. Also, we have our merch. Here's the link. Crush this at Monster Truck Spread Shop. We're going to be having new shirt designs next month. I have to get them finished up. I've been busy doing truck wraps. I've been busier than ever with that, and also the move to the new area here. So I've been stupidly busy with that. So Cheech is going to let me know here where he's going to be in Iowa. He will be in Algona, Iowa. So if you're in around the Algona, Iowa area, go meet Cheech. Go check out the Hall Brothers and the Car Crush and the display they're doing. Yeah. So next week, Tony Dixon, Swamp Thing, guys. Go check out our merch. Thank you to everybody that supports us. High Octane Coffee, 6B Apparel, J Concepts, Backshot Productions, Justin Stories, Bradley Shaw Designs, MTRC. And guys, as I always say on every single episode, check up on your friends and family, guys. Mental health is super important. If you know anybody struggling, having issues, guys, just please check up on them. Friends and family is most important. There's a comment here. Ed Beckley with CFP, Pawhuska, Oklahoma. I hope I'm not, messing that up. But if you're around the Pawhuska, Oklahoma area, go check out Ed Beckley with CFP, the No Limits tour. Ed Beckley puts on awesome shows. The Bigfoot design, Bigfoot Bad Boy, was through Ed Beckley and Bigfoot back in the day. So, Ed, you're awesome. Got to get you on the show at some point. And guys, as we always say, keep the rubber side down and the shiny side up, everybody. Peace.